Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the TIGAR webinar. I'm Gloria Elliott, the program manager for TIGAR. Just to give you a sense of how the day is going to go today, we have a couple of hours set aside for this webinar, but we are likely to finish early. It will really depend on how long we'll need for the Q&A period. So I'm going to start off with some remarks about, the ARPA model in general and how this particular exploratory topic fits into that model. And then we'll get into the details of the TIGAR program. From there, I'm going to turn it over to Andrew Stark, who is the agreements officer for the TIGAR program. And he's going to take you through some of the finer details of the acquisition and the contracting portion of this program. From there, my team will come online and we'll start to answer some of the questions that have been submitted through the portal. So let me put some, faces to names, starting with myself, just to give you a sense of my background. I was a full professor before coming to ARPA-H. I spent about 2 decades running a biostabilization lab at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. From there, there I worked on stabilization technologies for a range of biologics, ranging from proteins through to cells, tissues, and organs. I did spend some time in a startup company working specifically on cryobanking of tissue slices, and also spent some time with the Organ Preservation Alliance looking at strategies to support organ biobanking. So biostabilization is my primary technical background. And this, of course, is the people behind the curtain that are really making everything happen. On the call today, we have Annie Bowles-Welch, who is the CETA for this program, and Daniel Michaud, who is the business finance manager for this program. So they are in the weeds daily with the activities of this program. In the second row, you see all of our contracting team, which is led by the agreements officer for TIGAR, Andrew Stark. So his email is Tony Stark, but he goes by Andrew. And his team, Annie Lenfist and Delaney Minker. They are also on the call today. So you may be hearing from any of these folks during the Q&A period. How things are going to work with the Q&A, we're not actually doing live Q&A. We have to make sure that we have that we're providing the same information to everybody. So to do that, we take your incoming questions and we post them up on our FAQ site for the program. So we really won't be answering questions in the chat. The chat is really meant to facilitate you sharing information about yourself and just to handle any technical issues coming about during the webinar. So if you have trouble with sound or trouble logging in, etc., then by all means you can drop a note in there. But any programmatic questions about TIGAR should go in through this FAQ site. So I'm leaving this up here for just a little minute here so that everyone can, take a minute to open up this website and, be prepared to submit your questions as you go. I know there are some grant writing support people on the call and some leads from different organizations that may facilitate partnering. So this would be a great opportunity for those kinds of folks to introduce themselves in the chat in the event that there are people looking for partners or looking for help in that regards. Okay, so with that, I think we've gathered up most of the participants that we're expecting. So let me move ahead and tell you a little bit about the ARPA model and how this exploratory topic fits into that model. So A lot of people ask us if we are part of the NIH, if we're just a program that runs as part of NIH. We are not. We are our own separate agency, and we are a unique funding agency by design. So we are pretty much led PM driven. So we don't necessarily have a top-down agenda that we're here to execute on. The program managers come to the table and bring their own ideas that comes from the market and from the communities that they're engaged in. And then we push those ideas up to leadership and we get buy-in for those ideas. And that's how programs emerge. And what we're really trying to do is seek radical change. We're not trying to push incremental. We're not trying to increment on research. We're really trying to reach out into the future and find a future that we want to manifest and try and bring that to the present. So we really are pushing hard new ideas that seem like science fiction. They seem like they're impossible ideas, but we look at what it takes to bring those ideas to fruition. Maybe it's a matter of convergence. Maybe it's a matter of working across government. Maybe there's some enabling technology that's missing, that if we could field that enabling technology, we could really crack the problem open. And that's really what the TIGAR exploratory topic is about. We've identified areas where we think we could really benefit from some enabling technology. And this program is about, reaching out and trying to get the community stirred up and thinking about that and bringing some new ideas to the table so that in the future we can potentially converge some of the best ideas and have a hard run at unlocking complex tissue preservation. PMs have a lot of autonomy. But we do engage very intensely with the performers that we support. So we are at the table with you. We start with you from day one. We're there as you scope your projects and build up your milestones and et cetera. And then we're with you every step of the way. We have weekly to monthly levels of engagement, and we work with you to find pivots when pivots are necessary and to keep you driving towards the end goal, because your success is our success. We are term limited. We're only here for 3 to 6 years, and that sets a fire under us. We are very motivated to come in and make change in a certain area of science and have impact within the few years that we're here. So along those lines, PMs typically come in with an area that they really want to make change in. So we come in and we set our flag down in a certain area. And we have to say, as a result of that, we have to say no to a lot of really good science so we can really push forward on the territories that we have planted our flag in. So along those lines, this is where I planted my flag. It was on getting to abundance is the tagline that I use, about improving access to regenerative cells, tissues, and organs. Regenerative medicine has so much promise, and we're around the corner from breaking out so many new technologies across all these levels of biologics, but we're still terribly hindered by both the manufacturing costs and the logistical hurdles of getting those materials out to patients. So biological materials across all levels of complexity have difficulties. If we look at biomolecules, the simpler of the biologics, even though we've developed a lot of storage strategies, the temperatures that we're required to keep things at are still pretty rigid and hard to maintain. And many biologics are still quite sensitive to freezing and cannot tolerate a freezing stress. When we move into cell and gene therapies, really there, all we have access to is cryostorage as a means of storing things. So there's certainly room to improve there to have more flexible storage options. And that's really the primary basis for the BOSS program, which has already been launched. Tissues and organs, of course, we know in most cases we have no shelf life at all. We get hours to days of storage, and oftentimes have to use very expensive equipment to do that. So that's really what this is, the pillar that we're talking about today. We're looking at how we can improve our reserves and stockpile and expand access to complex biologics that are large in size and complex in composition. So just, this is preaching to the choir here. I'm sure if you're here on this call, you understand regenerative medicines and all of the advantages they offer, all of the hope that it offers. We're all well aware, I think, of the organ wait list and how many people are waiting for a transplant and how much impact an organ donation can make. If we also look at tissues, in that context as well, there's a 44 billion market size that we're looking at projected out to 2033, but we're still very limited in the number of tissues that we've been able to successfully package and stockpile and facilitate the distribution of. And this problem is only it's getting worse as we have success. We're looking at so many new ways of expanding the donor pool so we can get more tissues and organs into supply. We're developing bioprinting capabilities, tissue engineering capabilities, xenotransplantation is coming online, but they still all suffer from this bottleneck, which is preservation. So current methods, I mentioned we really only have cryopreservation for cell and gene therapies, and we have a number of cold storage approaches from, for more complex tissues. But, the majority of what we're doing today puts us in a position of vulnerability. So whether we're talking about the possibility of supply chain constraints for liquid nitrogen, which has happened and will happen again, through to equipment shortages. When the COVID vaccines first rolled out, it was almost impossible to get your hands on a -80 refrigerator. They were all scooped up very quickly for that crisis. But there's also the challenge of power outages and natural disasters and man-made disasters. When we lose power, we lose a lot of resilience for our very important assets, valuable assets. So this is where we are today. We want to leap towards a future where that is not an issue, where we have a lot more resilience built into our supply chain, where we have options besides cryo to store samples, where we can scale up and increase volumes and get the costs, the individual manufacturing costs down, and ensuring we can stockpile and build the reserves we need, enabling scaling in, realizing the promise of personalized medicine. So we have solutions for all types of therapies, whether they're customized or mass produced, and scaling out. We think about that a lot. How do we reach everybody? How do we get to patients that are in rural communities? How do we support our men and women that go up into space? All of the remote and austere locations we might find ourselves in, we want to be able to deliver products to all of those locations. So that is sort of the backdrop for what I've been interested in general. And now I want to get into really the specifics of TIGAR, which is not a full program, but it is what we call an exploratory topic. It's a cluster of seedlings to energize the field and to give us some new technologies that we can work with in the future towards a potential larger program in this area. So the vision we have for the future is one where anybody, anywhere could potentially replace a diseased or malfunctioning body part with an easy to access, low cost tissue replacement solution. So some of the bottlenecks that we have to overcome, we've talked about these a lot in the field. They still, even though we've worked on many aspects of this, I think we still have room to grow in terms of innovative technologies. So the inherent complexity of tissues, the fact that we're dealing with many, many different cell types, poses this challenge of differential processing requirements for different cell types. So just to begin with, we have an inherently challenging problem. But then the fact that we're dealing with thick tissue specimens, raises the issue of diffusion limits and how fast we can go when it comes to perfusing or diffusing cryoprotectants into tissues. That leads to uneven CPA distribution and accruing toxicity in certain regions, and also heat thermal diffusion limitations. We can only cool so quickly. We can't get uniform rates throughout the entire tissue. So that leads to challenges with uncontrolled ice formation. And similarly, on the rewarming cycle, it's just the same problem in reverse. So there are many, I think, possibilities here across the whole spectrum of materials innovation on the protectants front, through to all of the different processing innovations that we can come to bear with both heat and mass transfer aspects of this problem. So the TIGAR program is really about picking anything in this space, anything that constitutes a technical hurdle for thick tissues, and trying out well-scoped solutions to target that particular aspect. So the program is going to run in 2 9-month phases. The first 9-month phase is really about trying to figure out if your idea has any legs. So, it might be a materials innovation. It may be a new category of protectants that you want to try out. The first few months of phase 1 would be about, working out some of the parameters of that. And then before the end of phase 1, really getting it into a tissue context, into a demonstration system, and showing that, your new category of materials is indeed reducing the toxicity or improving the performance of the tissue, and showing that we use this expression a lot, that the thing is a thing. You have some ability to turn a dial here. You can move the needle on the particular attribute or technical hurdle that you are tackling. And then if there's actually something there that we think is worth digging into a little bit deeper, then there'll be a second. So there'll be a go, no go between phase 1 and phase 2. And if you can show that the thing is a thing in phase 1, you'll get to go to phase 2, where you have more time to optimize the system and then demonstrate that you have improved the 30-day survivability of that particular system. So there's not hard numbers here on the particular viability levels, et cetera, that we're expecting you to achieve, because some tissues are just going to be inherently harder than others. So really, you need to define these for the particular system that you choose to work on, defining what a good, where the baseline is. So you establish where baseline is in phase 1, and then, you try to make a substantial improvement on that particular, tissue functionality, et cetera. So the budgets are not to exceed $2 million over that 2 phases of performance. It doesn't have to be $2 million. If you've got a smaller idea, smaller in scope, that requires a significantly less budget to test, that's great. Don't feel like you have to write a $2 million budget, but that is certainly the upper limit. And the goal ultimately is to improve the 30-day functionality, 30-day storage functionality of that tissue. So you will have to come in with a specific demonstration system. This can't all be an in silico simulation. It can't all be just a chemistry design experiment. We really want you working in a demonstration system fairly early into this period. We are looking for demonstrations on systems that are challenging. So we've put some size limits on things. Here at a high level, we're either looking for you to demo in an intact functional tissue system. So that might be an organ substructure, it might be a whole organ, it might be an allograft. Or if not that, then some reasonably sized fraction of tissue. So it may be a chunk of liver tissue, or it may be, an engineered construct like multicellular organoids. But in each of these cases, we've given you some, in a subsequent slide, I'll give you just a little bit more detail on that. We're really trying to zero you in on demonstration systems for which we have known preservation challenges. So if the system is small enough and thin enough that they are currently amenable to current cryopreservation methods, an example might be pancreatic islets. We've actually made, so the smaller size pancreatic islets, we've made pretty excellent progress on. We've made excellent progress on thin tissue sections that are on the order of 100 to 200 microns. Those are very amenable to current methods. So those we would consider out of scope for this particular demonstration system. We really want you to pushing towards the things for which we don't have good solutions today. So high level milestones, phase 1, demonstrate measurable progress against a key technical hurdle. So you define that, whether it's a toxicity issue that you're pushing on, or a thermal processing, or a mass diffusion or perfusion approach. And then as you move into phase 2, then the demonstrations are more about what is the function of the tissue after you've deployed that particular innovation. So here it is in greater detail. So, here's some examples of what your metrics might look like. If we take, for example, don't worry, I'm not going to read all of these out, but these are just here on screen for you to screen capture or go back and review the presentation later. This is recorded and will be available to you. But just to give you a little bit more help in putting your metrics together, just looking at the phase 1s, for example, your metrics might include assessing baseline function of the tissue system, both before you cryopreserve it, so the fresh tissue with all of the associated functions, and then cryopreserving it, and not necessarily doing a 30-day hold, but just take it down, preserve it, hold it at your desired storage temperature, whether that's -20 or 4 degrees, hold it for some time period, bring it back out, show the function again. And then also included in that, you should be thinking about the critical parameters that you're trying to control there. What is the dial that you're turning? What are you systematically changing? So showing that you have control over that particular design feature, and how you can create a range of values that would allow you to do systematic optimization. So I'll just move on from there, but these will be available for you to hopefully give you some guidance on how you might construct your own metrics for your program. Preferred tissue systems, again, we're pretty wide open here. There are so many potential regenerative medicine solutions that involve many tissues in the body. We really want you to bring what you're comfortable with, but be prepared to show the state of the art in terms of how these tissues are shipped and stored today, what the limitations are there, but also, the clinical impact, the market impact, be able to tell us about why this is an important tissue, and how overcoming these hurdles would have financial or societal impact. It would be important to give us some narrative on that. Just to hit real on a couple of these that may be a little bit have some ambiguity around them. Multicellular organoids, as I mentioned, we're really looking for the more complex end of organoids. So some organoids are small and composed of a single cell type and are very amenable to existing preservation methods. We're really looking for you to, if you want to use organoids as a demonstration system, make sure they are of substantial size and complexity for which there truly is a challenge to delivering these currently. Same thing with tissues. I'm sure we're going to get asked about tissue slices that are used as non-animal models of disease. We are certainly open to that, but as I mentioned previously, not the easy one. So if it's very thin and it's fairly uniform in composition, current methods are working well there. So just make sure that you're substantiating that this is a complex slab of tissue, or there are challenges, known challenges with that particular tissue. And I think the others are probably more obvious. Organ substructures, whole organs, vascularized composite allografts. I think these are all inherently large in nature and complex in nature. So I think less ambiguity there. Examples of scope. I really don't want you to stick to this list. These are sort of known knowns. These are things we can move out on. I think things are swirling around out there in this space right now. Just for example, demonstrations of new classes of non-toxic preservation agents. That's something that's certainly in scope. Any enhancements to biotransport, very interested in non-cryogenic preservation methods, or repurposed compounds that can have a role in preservation. Also open, chemical advances are welcome, but also open to any in silico AI, high throughput approaches that can yield within the 9-month phase 1, that can yield some hits or some outcomes that are actionable within that time frame. Open to polymerization-based concepts, open to any perfusion techniques, whether they're ex vivo or in vivo. But I am really hoping to get things well beyond this list. I really don't want you to feel like you're limited to this in any way. I'm sure many of you come from fields that I can't even conceive of as relevant right now, but are relevant to this problem. So I'm very encouraging of seeing things that are not on this list. I wanted to also mention, because I might not have highlighted it as much in a previous slide as I should have, I'm really interested in temperature flexible solutions. And what I mean by that are having a preservation paradigm that would allow some amount of time at perhaps a higher temperature, ambient, elevated temperatures, 4 degrees Celsius, maybe days at those temperatures, and then amenable to transition into a lower temperature for long-term storage. So right now, I think we design preservation strategies for a given temperature, and they don't work outside of that temperature range. If you think about some of the approaches we use for small molecules, it enables storage at 4 degrees Celsius, but if the temperature drops below that, it's destructive to the product. So that's temperature inflexible. We'd really like to move away from those kinds of solutions. Similarly, with cryopreservation today, if we're stored at cryogenic temperatures and we get to those temperatures on a very prescribed cooling rate path, and we rewarm on a prescribed path, we're okay. But deviations from those cryogenic temperatures, even for seconds, can be catastrophic. So when I talk about temperature flexibility, I'm looking for solutions solutions that would release our vulnerability from those thermal excursions. Out of scope is also helpful sometimes to know what we're not looking for, really not looking to increment on current cryopreservation methods, not looking for iteration on the percent DMSO in the composition without any change in the storage temperature or some of the other attributes that we talked about. Not looking at short-term preservation strategies. We're really looking for things that can get us out to stockpiling conditions. We are looking for cellularized tissues, not decellularized or acellular tissue systems. We know those are easier to preserve. So again, we're trying to stay in the zone where we really don't have good solutions today. We mentioned previously organoids, spheroids that are small and unicellular. Those are not of interest. We're not interested in concepts that can't scale to, ultimately we want to get to a point where we can do whole allografts, organs, really complex structures. So even if you're demonstrating in a smaller system, we really are looking for solutions that can scale to increasingly larger systems with more investment, more development work. Not looking for a better refrigerator or package. We're really looking at this program. Not that that isn't important, it's just out of scope for this particular program. We really want to focus on the biological solutions for this given solicitation. And of course, we can't do dangerous gain of function research. Per the definition in the most recent executive order, which I understand to be changing again within the next couple of weeks. So we may be sending out more information on that. But essentially what that means is whatever you're doing shouldn't turn the tissue you're working on into a dangerous tissue that is more infectious or contains toxins or contains any kind of an adaptation that might lead to transmission of dangerous infectious vectors, for example. I don't think most of what would come into this program would fit into that category, but if we get proposals that have something that dallies along that vein, then we may have to have some conversations about that, whether we're reaching too far in that regards. Okay, so what the submission looks like, this is going to be the very first time at ARPA-H that we're going to be bringing in solution video pitches as an alternative to the traditional solution summary. I'm going to start down at the bottom with the supplemental slides. We have given you a template there. The way to think about this is our pre-read. We've given you some very specific things that we're looking for. Tell us about your company. There's a quad chart which breaks out the major components that we're looking at. A concept overview, so that's kind of like a visual abstract, and then a white space chart which shows where we are today and the future that we're trying to get to. What is the white space that you're driving into? And then a cost summary. So this gives us a pre-glimpse of your overall concept before we view your solution video. So your solution video could be a narrative of these slides, or it could be an entirely different set of slides. So we're really going to let the solution video be up to you. You use whatever materials, formats, et cetera, that you're comfortable with, that you think best conveys your solution. And we'd expect probably that the majority will come in as narrated PowerPoint decks. But if you have other ideas for how you want to present your idea, that's okay too. So again, just foot stomping. The supplemental slides are required. They're according to our format. You may use them, you may elect not to, but you do need to submit both the supplemental slides and your solution video. The solution video should have a captions file so that in the event we have reviewers that have difficulty hearing the sound on your video, we have an alternative text that we can look at for the review. So those are the three components of the solution video submission. Back up. At this stage, we will be giving you an encourage or discourage. So this is information that you use at your discretion. Generally, if we're discouraging it, we have strong reasons for doing so, and the likelihood of it getting funded at the full proposal stage is pretty low. So it's up to you whether you want to put the time and energy into investing in a full proposal. And encourage is, again, not a promise that we are going to fund it. It's just, this looks like it has the right contours of something we might like to fund, and then we would solicit for the full proposal to make a better evaluation of that. So this is not hard and fast. If you get a discourage, you can still submit a full proposal, but you really should consider whether it's worth the time, energy, and resources on your end. The full proposal, we have dates listed for those. I have the dates coming up, but it's a month plus from when the solution summary comes in. That will be a more traditional format, I think, that you're used to. The technical and management proposal can be up to 10 pages. It doesn't have to be 10 pages. If you can tell your story in less than 10 pages, that's okay too. But encourage you to use a lot of visuals in there, and they go a long way. And so in addition to describing your technical approach, you'll also include things like milestones, metrics, the deliverables you anticipate, a Gantt chart, and really encourage you to think about risk mitigation and alternative approaches. We're fully expecting, we're really hoping to get some really wild ideas come in here. These are investments where we expect a high degree of failure, and that's okay. That's really what we want to do that's what an exploratory topic is about, is to try the riskier ideas at a small scale and just get the answer to a success is finding out whether or not this thing will work or not. Whatever the intervention is, whatever you're planning to overcome a technical hurdle, you might have no preliminary data whatsoever, but the concept thinks, it could potentially work. And if it works, it could have high impact. These are very much, what we want to chase. But where possible, you should still include risk mitigation and pivots that you could go to if, your early months, your first concept doesn't necessarily work out. It would be good to have some other ideas that you can pitch to. Bio sketches, references, letters of support, those don't go into the 10-page limit. But those should be included. Cost proposal is the written budget narrative that really should have strong justification for how you're spending why you need the funds you need and how you would spend them. There's also a cost proposal workbook, a spreadsheet that goes along with that has all of the details in it. And we also have an admin and national policy document that solicits certain information from you that allows us to do our internal checks as part of the overall process. Timeline, we are asking for the solution videos to come in by June 8th. We realize this is coming up pretty quickly, but if you can't get ready for a June 8th deadline, that's okay. We have another one coming up December 8th. So we're going to have 2 tranches of submissions here, 2 intake groups. And then if we've been successful in shaking out some really good enabling technology, will either, potentially double down on some of those investments and look for pursue follow-on investments, or if the field is ready, maybe we would look at launching a program. None of that is promised, of course, but we are that's really what this program is all about. It's seeing if we can push through enough enabling tech that we can converge on a bigger solution. So June 8th for the first intake group, full proposal we expect in by August 5th. So we'll take, probably most of the month of June to get through the submissions and give you some feedback. So then you'll have most of the month of July to prepare your full proposal. That will be a select, non-select gate. So that will be the yes or no, the final yes or no. If you get a yes, then we will go into negotiations and we will iterate with you. So we don't, I said yes or no here. It's actually not a yes or no. It's a we're interested. And then we go into negotiations. And if negotiations are successful, then it's a yes and we'll move to the award. Sometimes we don't get all the way through negotiations. So until we're over here at the award stage, it isn't a full, complete yes. But we're hoping to have that finished tentatively by fall of 2026 and having our kickoff sometime in the fall, maybe closer to Christmas, we'll be bringing out, we'll be launching all of these various seedlings. And then we're going to get ready and do it all over again, with the December 8th intake group. In terms of deliverables, in terms of the paperwork you can expect to be working on during each of those phases, we mentioned the solution video that has to come in, and the supplementary side is part of the solution video pitch. I mentioned the 10-page cost proposal worksheet and bio sketches that come in at the full proposal stage. There's still more paperwork once we get into the contracting stage. What we will be asking you for then is a task description document. We fondly call it the TDD. This is where you basically lay out a Gantt chart in great detail with all of the specifics of the experiments that you plan to do on what timeline, both the tasks and the subtasks and the contingencies, et cetera. And from that, we build a milestone schedule. That's the schedule that we'll construct a payment milestone schedule. That's a schedule against which we pay you on. That can be monthly or it can be quarterly. So that's something that we'll be talking with you at this stage. But essentially, it's the list of things that dictate whether you get paid or not. So some of them will be hard metrics of whether you've achieved some change in the parameter that we're seeking. Many of them will be effort-based milestones, completing the critical experiments that need to be done to answer the questions. And then as we get ready for launch, we look at your team's position in this space, and we'll get into the finer details. If you're if you're coming in as a partnership, then we'll want to make sure that you have a data sharing plan, within your team, that you have access to the intellectual property that's needed to do the research. So that's something to think about. If you're looking at somebody else's work and you're inspired by it and you want to try it out in your own lab, you need to make sure that you have freedom to operate. So if you don't hold the IP on that particular innovation, that is going to be an impediment in us going forward. So do think about that. Just make sure you have the ability to license or you have the freedom to operate in the space that you're thinking you want to explore. There are all the key dates in summary. You've seen these previously, but they're there in one slide if you want to screen capture that. Again, this is the portal for questions. I haven't been able, I've seen the chat has been going feverishly while I've been talking, but hopefully you're just getting to know each other there and you're pushing your questions over here to the portal. And my team is working in the background, receiving your questions there and preparing responses, and they will be on the call in the second half of the webinar, sharing out some of those responses. Anything that doesn't get answered today, if it's come in through this portal, we will be crafting a response, and you will see it on the FAQ in the coming days. After the webinar, if you think about something in the middle of the night, hop out of bed and submit your question, and we will get to it in the morning, and we will continue to answer questions as we go through the pre-submission period. I didn't mention the sidebars. We have scheduled a lot of sidebars. When you registered for the webinar, you had the option to sign up for a sidebar. Just wanted to remind everyone that we do not do scoping. We do not handle scoping questions during that call. This is really, we don't evaluate your ideas, I guess is a better way to say that. It isn't those 10-minute sidebars. It's not a time to say, well, we were thinking about this. What do you think about my idea? We can't answer those questions. It's a competitive phase right now. So giving you that feedback would be considered a bias against others. So really those calls are just about answering picky programmatic questions. Maybe you have questions about building your budget spreadsheet. There are any number of programmatic questions that you may have. That's really what that 10-minute sidebar is about. The whole team is on the call. The contracting team is on the call. So we can answer any questions about your submissions or any problems you might be running into there. Anything about the paperwork or the deadlines, registrations, et cetera, et cetera. That's what the sidebars are about. So do use them appropriately. So with that, I am going to now stop sharing and let Andrew Stark take over, and he's going to dive into the contracting, and I'm going to go away with my team and look at some of your questions that have come in and prepare us for the Q&A phase.
All right. Thank you, Gloria. I appreciate that. Once again, hi, everyone. My name is Andrew Stark. I'm one of the agreement officers here at ARPA-H with the Business Innovation Division, and I'm going to just cover some of the information with regards to the TIGAR solicitation, walk through some of the submission process, key materials, and just some reminders. Some of this Gloria may have already covered, but I figured better to hear it again. I do want to encourage everyone to make sure you go through and read the TIGAR ISO in its entirety and carefully. And the other thing I encourage you to do is, if you plan on submitting, please register in SAM.gov as early as possible. The SAM.gov is not something that's controlled by ARPA-H, and there's a process that you have to go through, and sometimes it can take a couple of weeks to do that. So we recommend you get registered in SAM.gov as early as possible if you aren't already. The other thing that I recommend is you check the TIGAR FAQs regularly. As Gloria mentioned, you'll see updates posted there regularly with questions that come in from different organizations, and we'll be posting responses there. So you'll find some helpful information out there. So that's the other thing I would recommend that you go and do regularly. And then one more thing while we're on the slide is just to emphasize one key requirement is that from the start, the solution video needs to come first, and it's required in order to be able to submit a full proposal. If you have any questions about that, let us know. Delaney, you've already moved to the next one. Thank you. For TIGAR, we plan on, ARPA-H will plan on using other transactions, or OTs, as you'll see them in other places. OTs are legally binding agreements if you're not as familiar with them, but they are not traditional procurement contracts or grants or cooperative agreements. This allows ARPA-H to have a little bit more flexibility as we structure projects and technical goals and milestones with regards to the TIGAR program. This flexibility also makes it easier for a broader range of performers and allows them to move a little bit quicker than maybe under some of the traditional mechanisms like a FAR-based contract. That being said, OTs are still formal agreements with clear expectations, deliverables, and terms. So proposer should think in terms of defined milestone-driven efforts with a clear plan for execution as you're putting your solution together. Delaney, if you could go to the next slide, please. This slide gives just a high-level view of the submission and selection process. Like I said, Gloria went through some of this, but just another way of looking at it. Like mentioned, first step will be the solution video, and that step is mandatory. We'll have 2 intake groups. First one, the deadline is June 8th, and then the second is December 8th of 2026. After review, submitters will receive an encourage or discourage response. And then from there, if you receive an encourage, you can submit a full proposal. And even if you receive a discourage, like Gloria mentioned, you are able to submit a full proposal as well if you choose to do so. One point I want to emphasize is that the solution videos and the full proposals are reviewed independently, not comparatively. So the goal would be to submit something that clearly addresses the program and the published evaluation criteria in the ISO. This slide kind of gives you an idea of all the TIGAR materials on sam.gov within the full solicitation package. There's several documents here, so I'll just go through some of these. I know Gloria did as well. The main document is the TIGAR ISO. That's your core solicitation document, covers the overall rules, eligibility, key dates, submission instructions, evaluation criteria, word information, that type of thing. If someone only reads that one document, that would be the one I would start with. But really, you should go through everything if you plan on submitting something. Next would be Appendix A, which gives kind of the program and technical description. This is where you should go to kind of just understand the program better, the goals of TIGAR, the technical boundaries, the kind of effort the ARPA-H is wanting to support. So if you were to ask yourself, is my idea actually a good fit for this program? That's probably where you should go look. Next would be the solution video stage. There are 2 documents here that you would want to look at. Appendix B0, which explains what needs to be submitted and how to format it. And then the second would be Appendix B1. This goes into the required template for the supplemental slides that Gloria spoke about. Once again, one thing I would emphasize that the slides in the recorded video do not have to match the supplemental slides exactly, but the supplemental slides themselves are required, and you have to follow the template. Then after that, you'll have the full proposal stage. It gets a little more detailed at that point. You have Appendix C0, which gives the overall instructions for the full proposal submission. And then you have the documents that go with that, such as the technical management proposal, the cost proposal narrative, the cost proposal workbook, and the administrative and national policy document. None of these are optional extras. They are part of the required submission package. So please make sure if you are encouraged or if you decide to submit a full proposal that you include all of these in your submission. One thing I think I would advise everyone is don't wait till the last minute to open all the files. I recommend you go ahead and download all of them, read through all of them, see how they all fit together, make sure your team understands which document answers what question. A lot of the problems can be avoided if the teams aren't just focusing on the technical write-up, but they see how everything aligns as far as the budget files, the administrative documents, and the formatting requirements. The other thing is don't assume that the pros shouldn't assume that the ARPA-H opportunity is like all the other ones that we have at ARPA-H. We have a lot of opportunities out there on sam.gov and many programs and efforts. So don't assume that all of the documents here are the same as anywhere else. These are some TIGAR specific documents. So that's what you should use as you're preparing your submission. So really, I wrap it all together. I would say download the full package, read it carefully, use the TIGAR specific templates, and then let the solicitation documents guide your submission as you put it together. Gloria went through this some, but I'll give it a little bit different viewpoint. This slide walks through the TIGAR review process. You'll have the solution video submissions that go through the solution submissions portal. And then after the submission deadlines, the reviews will be conducted. The feedback will be documented by Gloria, and the submitters will receive either an encourage or discourage notification. For the full proposals, there is an initial review to confirm the submission is complete and compliant. All the documents are there as required. And then also to make sure that they're submitted on time and follow any other requirements that are stated. Then the reviews will be conducted on the full proposals. Gloria will make a recommendation, and the scientific review official will make a decision. And at that point is when all notifications will be sent out to the proposers. From my perspective, one takeaway is that compliance matters. So just recommend that you have your package as you're putting it together, that everything's complete and conforming as stated in the ISO. Here I want to briefly highlight the main evaluation areas. First, you'll have the overall scientific and technical merit. Reviewers will be looking at whether the approach is innovative, feasible, and well thought out with tasks in a logical sequence, and the risks are clearly identified. Second, you'll have the capability of the proposer and the team. That includes expertise, experience needed to execute the work and manage it within budget and schedule. Third will be potential contribution to the ARPA-H mission and user experience. Or another way, does the proposed work have a meaningful path toward future impact, and does it address real end user needs? And then lastly is cost, price, and budget assessment. The budget and schedule should be realistic and aligned with the technical plan. So I would say a good proposal would be one where the technical plan, the team, the milestones, and the budget all line up clearly. So yeah, just reminder, read the entire ISO, register on the ARPA-H submission portal, register in sam.gov. The sooner you start that, the better. Pay close attention to the required documents, supporting documentation, and the cost proposal instructions. For the cost proposal, make sure that the narrative explains the basis for the cost and shows how the budget supports the work being proposed. And I think the main thing here would be to start early, use the templates, and give yourself some time to check everything and make sure it's all the way you want it to be before you submit it. This slide introduces the concept of privity of contract, or in simpler terms, just that the government needs to understand exactly who is entering into an agreement with party and what the legal relationship is with the former team. So the parties that sign the agreement with the government are the parties bound by it. So if you're proposing a team, multiple organizations, it's important to be clear about your structure and the relationship among the team members before award. That will help during negotiations and avoid any confusion later on during possible performance. And then the next slide will go into this a little bit more. This slide just builds, like I said on the last slide, kind of shows what a prime subcontractor structure would look like. In this type of arrangement, the government would contract or sign an agreement with the prime, and then the prime would set up contracts with the subcontractors. So that means the government would have direct contractual relationship with the primes, but not with the subs. The prime is responsible for the government for overall performance, and the subcontractors work through the prime. This reminder at the top is just an important practical point. If your team includes subcontractors, make sure you build enough time in your schedule to get those subawards finalized in place. Even if the technical work is ready to go, delays with the subawards can sometimes slow some execution. I've seen that happen before. So if you're going to have subs, make sure that you've got everything ready to go in a timely fashion. Big takeaway here, I would say, is just planning clarity. If you are going to have them, be realistic on the time and coordination that it takes to get everything going once a word is signed. And I think that was my last slide. So like it was mentioned before, if y'all have any other questions at any time during the process of putting together a solution, you have the option to submit a question. I think that was shared in the chat here. You can submit through our site, and we'll get a response to you. You can do that today or at a later time as well, and then we'll get a response for you out on the FAQs. And back to you, Gloria. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. So again, just to reiterate, we are going to handle, my team, Annie and Daniel are going to come online, and maybe Andrew as well, to answer some of the questions that have been submitted and for which we have cross-checked and vetted answers, so we don't have to walk anything back. We're probably not going to get to all of the questions that were submitted. Those that we don't get to this afternoon, we will be crafting a careful reply to, and putting them up on the FAQ. So rest assured, if you put your question in through the portal, we will respond to it, and if not this afternoon. So with that, so Daniel kindly put the link again in the chat. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Annie, and she's going to lead off some of the responses.
Thanks, Gloria. So for the first question, can I submit multiple solution videos for distinct concepts? Yes, proposers may submit more than one solution video, provided that each submission is based on distinct concepts. Next question, is the required template or prescribed format for the slides used in the solution video? Proposers should use slides to present key information supporting the proposed concept in the solution video. ARPA-H will not provide a template or prescribe a format for these solution video slides in order to give proposers flexibility to present information in a manner that supports understanding and assessment of the proposed effort. However, please note that the required supplemental slides, which are part of the solution video submission package, must follow the template and instructions provided in what's named as Appendix B, B1. Next question, can proposers involve collaboration with non-US based industry partners? And I just want to reword this question to open it a little bit wider. Are non-US companies eligible to apply and receive funding for TIGAR? Not all foreign entities are eligible for ARPA-H funding. Awards will not be made to entities organized under the laws of covered foreign countries defined in the National Security Act of 1947 as Russia, Iran, North Korea, and China. Individual solicitations may allow or restrict the participation for foreign entities to varying degrees. And if you have more information about this, please visit ARPA-H's International Affairs website and FAQs. You can find that online at ARPA/engage-and-connect/international. Next question. In the call for proposals, it says that, quote, one practical temperature attainable with conventional equipment, -80, -24 degrees, or 20 to 25 degrees Celsius, or room temperature. Could you clarify what kind of equipment is required or give examples? This statement, TIGAR ISO, refers to the program goals of achieving preservation temperatures that can be maintained by conventional equipment, such as an electric freezer or refrigerator. Experiments should be designed to show progress towards storage at easy-to-achieve temperatures. Next question, what does temperature flexible mean? Concepts that reduce reliance on strictly controlled temperature zones and can ensure safe storage in a range of environmental conditions is considered temperature flexible. While long-term temperature flexible storage is preferred, any advance that removes logistical hurdles or establishes shelf life stability at easy to maintain temperatures, preferably non-cryogenic, will be considered, as long as the solution is well justified and can be demonstrated to be clinically impactful. Next question, will machine perfusion approaches be considered as a preservation concept? If yes, would normothermic or hypothermic approaches be acceptable? Yes, the answer is normothermic or hypothermic machine perfusion approaches are within scope. Next question, for proof of concept development in phase 1, should the model system be the same as the intended demonstration system? And yes, the human tissue system also known as a model system or intended demonstration system, should be part of your primary approach to demonstrate proof of concept throughout the duration of TIGAR. And then you can have alternative approaches that may include demonstrations on additional tissue systems. What does it mean by white space chart? The white space chart is about the opportunity space for your proposed concept. And that was the end of the questions. I do have one last comment that if you have any questions about how to submit your solution video through the ARPA-H solution site, please visit the TIGAR FAQ webpage for the step-by-step instructions under solution video guidance. You can find additional help within the solutions portal by clicking the link Learn About Video Submissions and Uploads. That provides details about the file uploads and tips for upload success. If you still have questions about the submission process, please submit a question through the TIGAR FAQ webpage, which can also be accessed through this QR code that we've shown. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Annie. So again, if you submitted a question and you don't yet have an answer, it means we have to cross-check some fine print in the ISO or something along those lines so that we give you an accurate answer. But you should expect to see, feedback on the FAQ coming up, within 24 to 48 hours. It does take us a little bit to get all of the answers justified between the group, or all of the answers, concurred between the group, and then to send them to our team to put online. So do give us a little bit of grace there. What we're really trying to do here with this program is put some new enabling technology out there that will enable us to realize our goal of making sure that all Americans can have access to the life-saving potential in regenerative medicine. So not only are we trying to advance the R&D of complex tissues and organs, but we're really trying to deploy the innovations that will enable clinical biobanking and stockpiling. So not just science in the lab, but let's create some real solutions that are practical and pragmatic, that can bring costs down and make it easy for anybody to ship tissues. And with that, I think if we can achieve the goals of TIGAR, I think we can take the next steps towards realizing the full promise in regenerative medicines. So monitor the website, monitor the FAQ, sign up for a sidebar if you still have questions. If your ideas don't fit, if you've listened to this webinar and you think you have some really compelling things that you can do in this space, but it isn't fitting the confines of the TIGAR program, then we also have an open solicitation that you can submit ideas to. So that's it here in the middle. If you want to grab the QR code for that, this is our open ISO, and it will lead you to our open ISO, and it will lead you also to other funding opportunities that are live right now within the ARPA sphere. You can certainly sign up as well for our newsletter. We're constantly, whenever we release new programs, we talk about them in the newsletter, and we talk about upcoming deadlines. If you want to become a program manager, maybe the idea of coming here and working to build your own programs in spaces that are adjacent to this, that can impact health in some meaningful way for all Americans, talk to me or go through the portal and interface with us that way. But just talk to any PM. And we are looking earnestly for new program managers right now. So I would welcome you to have that conversation as well. These slides or the webinar rather, will be made available to you in the coming days. They will be, we will get the recording and make sure that everything is appropriately subtitled, and then we will send it out. If you've registered for the webinar, you will get a notification that it's out there and available for review. So with that, I thank you all for your attention today. I hope you are excited about the program and will bring your best ideas to bear. Thank you.